So first I want to just tell everybody that Ivy is a drummer and I'm a bass player. So we've got a rhythm section going on here. We're going to be auditioning guitarists and lead singers later at the barbecue. So everybody
Absolutely.
Come out, show us your chops.
Absolutely.
How many here have a Google Home or have tried a Google Home product? Whoa, that's pretty good. That's pretty good, Ivy.
Yeah, I like it.
Not bad, right?
Not bad.
So as Clay said, you're running design for hardware at Google. You're the VP of Design Google Hardware, which is only 2 years old, really officially. Correct. Within Google, within Alphabet. So you're kind of running a startup, as we were just talking about,
yes,
inside one of the biggest companies in the world. You guys, Google decided to launch a hardware consumer product business going after some small companies like Apple, Amazon, Samsung, et cetera. And you were tapped to design these products. Was that daunting? You know, how did you think, like, coming into that, what do I do with design to compete against these great companies with incredible product design histories?
Yeah, I actually found that the challenge really inspiring. Because when you have a company like Google, my task with my team was to create a design language of when you hold Google in your hands, what do you want it to feel like? And so we really looked at our own DNA in what Google already stood for as a brand, really wanting to be for everyone. It's actually quite, has a bit of fun, optimism, colorful, and look to see how could we translate that into the forms we make. So also, being late to the game in hardware gave us a bit of an advantage to sit back and really say, we're not this, we're not this, we're not this, we are this. And some of that was articulated through the use of 2 different materials. We wanted everything to be tactile and sensorial, so we felt like, whereas other hardware is one material, that to make things feel more human, we wanted it to be multi-sensory, which is something I think we're craving as a society. So the team and I view myself as the orchestra conductor over a very talented, very diverse group of people, because I think diversity leads to creativity. Really worked hard with some cross-functional partners to come up with some words that guided us toward the aesthetic attributes that we wanted to have in this first line of hardware. And the job was to really make it be a family of products where we did what was right for each one, for the Pixel phone, Pixel book, Google Home, for example, but that together in your home, they had an aesthetic that was recognizable.
As Clay alluded to, you have an interesting background to be someone running design at Google in this area, or just an interesting background, actually a fascinating background. You, in your 20s, you were a world-acclaimed jewelry designer, metal jewelry, and not just the Smithsonian, other museums. You've worked at Gap, Calvin Klein, Mattel, Coach, you know, all kinds of places. How did you, how did your path take you to end up at one of the world's biggest tech companies and sort of designing the aesthetic for, their consumer products?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm very grateful I'm there. My dad was an industrial designer, worked for Raymond Loewy, designed the Studebaker Hawk car, and as a little girl, he always taught me how to see things and look at them for more than what they appear to be. So look up at how a lighting fixture is attached, and how could I take that learning and apply it to other categories, other things. So I had a very mechanical mind. I think I started as a metalsmith because I had ideas in my head and I wanted to learn how to make them with my hands, which I'm also very grateful for, because I think when you go through that, you understand the process a little bit better. I went through designing all different categories, but I was always an innovator in each of those categories. I worked in these traditional consumer goods groups, but ran innovation labs. And I think, actually starting my training in fashion, fashion teaches you how to see what's coming. And it's also very, people think it's frivolous. It's not. It's based sometimes often on sociological trends, colors that people are craving, and it's very intuitive. So I'm really think that background and the fact that I've always pushed the envelope, even in these traditional consumer good groups, this is a perfect place to be because technology is the thing that will inform our lives going forward. So that's what I mean by I'm grateful to be in it.
So you came to Google originally, you told me, to work on the second generation of Google Glass, which didn't really progress to second generation, as it turns out, for consumers. But what was it like to come in with this variety of experiences, fashion, jewelry, and come into this highly engineering-oriented, data-oriented environment, first start working on this project, and then decide that wasn't going to work out, but then start collaborating with these brilliant people, but very different points of view. Were there bumps in the road along the way, and trying to say, like, here's how a designer works on a product?
Yeah, probably the biggest challenge was because design is subjective. I mean, I personally believe in a little bit of art and science. And as designers, we are the experts. However, you can't quantify it like you can in some of the engineering groups. So at first, my team and I were questioned, why that color, why that choice, and really had to talk about this idea around intuition and art and science. And the true test comes with the consumer. And that until that time, you do have to take a point of view, and we are trained in aesthetics. And so that took some getting used to. But now, and also, engineers tend to work a little more, especially software engineers, in silos. And designing hardware together, it really is a group effort because you're working through problems constantly. You also have to sign off as hardware earlier in the process. You can't iterate to the solution. So there were some cultural shifts. But I have to say, we are all working incredibly well together.
Were there specific sticking points where they just didn't get what you wanted to do or why you wanted to do it?
Well, yeah. Sometimes, it's easier to take the path of least resistance. I mean, we wanted to make, with Google Mini, it was intentional. When you hold that round shape in your hands, it almost feels like a river stone. It's very comforting and human, and it also, has two different materials. It would have been easier to just make a plastic black box, but we really had to convince everyone that it was worth the effort to create something that was not a black box. And I really think at this point, technology needs to fit into our lives and add aesthetics to our life, not be the black box with the blue light.
Right. Just want to remind everybody to get your questions ready in a couple of minutes, but I want to ask you, sort of building on that, we have black boxes everywhere. We have black boxes or pieces of technology in our hands that we're all staring at. We're putting these black boxes, or not actually, they're beautifully designed, tactile boxes in our living rooms, and they're listening to us and we're conversing with them. And we're having this big debate about a couple of things, about the addictive behavior we have with our devices and about privacy. And do we want to have devices listening to everything we do and having all of our information go in there? And I know you grapple with this, Google does, but I'm curious how you think about that from a design point of view, what you're doing to design devices so that maybe we help ourselves be less intrusive, or guide us away from addictive behavior, or make us feel more secure.
Yes. So, I mean, we are only interested in doing technology that is useful. And I think that's the role that technology needs to play in our lives. So, for example, in Google Home Mini, we intentionally put a button where you can shut it off when you don't want it to be listening. And also, by the way, now there's ways when we say listening, it only keeps the information after you say, OK, Google, and you can go in there and you can actually get rid of anything that it's saved.
But is it really gone?
Yes, it's really gone.
Okay.
Look, people giving us information and having our products in your home, we don't take lightly. And if you can't trust us, that's not good for us. So we are actively, in fact, there's wellbeing.google, where, to your point about some of the addictive behavior, which, by the way, initially happens in TVs, radio, comic books. And I know I'm addicted to streaming TV right now. But
what are you watching? What's good?
Oh, what am I watching? God, I can't remember the last thing I watched. I watched something.
Your Google, your device knows.
Oh, yeah. But essentially, you can, at this wellbeing.google, see all the things that we're putting in place because we want to feed you back the information so that you make smart decisions, so that you're in control of the time you spend with devices and that it's time well spent. So I feel like Google takes that very seriously.
So as part of this study and this thoughtfulness about this, you told me you've created something called the Empathy Lab. What is that? What is the Empathy Lab, and what does that mean? What are you studying there in the lab?
So 3 years ago, one of my design directors, Danielle Creddick, started something called the Empathy Lab, which was really to make sure that the EQ matches the IQ when we think about products. And how do we think about deep humanity as we go into this future of deep learning? And so really, I mean, we call it a lab. It's one person, and she does all of this great research and then surfaces it to a lot of cross departments so that they can keep things in mind as we venture into deep learning. So, for example, are we really talking about onboarding, or are we talking about creating connections? Are we really talking about modes, or should it be moods? I mean, starting to look at how human behavior and machine behavior can come together, because I think we're firm believers that it isn't either or, it's and both, and how do they make us richer with our connections? But I think we have to understand each other.
Yeah, I mean, your devices, the kind of devices you're designing, are introducing AI to consumers, to everybody, right? We're getting a little AI with natural language processing and all the functionality behind this, and it's only going to advance faster. So how is that? How do you see artificial intelligence, deep learning, impacting the way you design products and the type of products you're going to design? I mean, are we going to see radically different products a couple years from now because of that functionality that you're working on behind the device?
I wouldn't say radically different, but I think technology will be distributed by our senses. And again, it has to be useful. If it's not useful, and if the learning is not in service to actually making our lives easier, the idea is that tech should not be the center of our lives. Tech should allow us to live better lives. So I think we're all taking one step at a time and watching and learning ourselves. I think, and one step at a time. So the products will probably be affected depending on the way people accept, the way the public accepts, are these things useful? If they're useful, we'll continue to go down one road versus another. But it's really, it's early days, and I think, we say AI, and a lot of the features that are embedded in things today could be qualified as AI. It learns patterns, but it doesn't necessarily need to be scary because it's really, again, in service to us.
I think we have a question over here. Let's make sure to stand up and identify yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Nat, and I work at Ancestry.com. My question to you is, if you look at something like Google Home, you have hardware engineers, you have software engineers, a lot of data. How do you, as heading design, bring people forward with intuition into a common experience? How do you lead that?
Good question.
So yeah, it's a great question. You know, we do sprints where we actually have research where we'll put Google Home into people, actually with permission. We did a research project of what does Google Home see, and actually starting to look at it from the product's perspective to get some insight as to how people might want to interact with Google Home differently. So I think one of my roles and one of the beautiful things that's come out of the hardware division is more of this cross-collaboration and really making a lot of constant trade-offs and getting the engineers together more, both hardware, software, the assistant team, the research team, which is a new muscle that has been exercised. But it is like a startup in that you realize we have such incredible access to amazing experts at Google. I mean, I think the fact that we can draw from all the different areas, if we have a question about a product or how a service that we want to deliver, makes it really powerful.
You sold more Google Homes in the first quarter than Amazon sold Echoes. Do you like cheer that on from a designer? You're like, yeah, my design won there, or do you not even think about it like that?
Oh no, we definitely, I mean, like I said, the consumer is the final test.
Yeah.
But you know, we cheered when we won like 26 design awards, and we actually read the comments by consumers, the thing we really cheered on, because again, that first year, which was last year,
yeah,
when we were asked, where's the data that shows this is the right shape? What really got us excited is some of the consumer reviews said, I love the pretty shape, or I love the color, or oh my God, this is so different. So as designers, it was like, yes, and you don't always get it right, but that kind of feedback coming from the marketplace is what's really exciting because it gives us more credibility, which we have now, and respect, that you have to use your intuition sometimes up front, but then it gets validated by the consumer.
I think I saw one question way over here. Stand up and identify yourself. Thanks.
Yeah, hi, Keval Desai from Introvest Partners, a venture capital firm. So let me start by saying I have a Pixel 2 XL, and I love it, so thank you.
What color do you have? Is it black?
I have the black, yeah.
Okay.
I have the cover on the back so you can see it.
Okay.
So two-part question. We have a 9-year-old at home, and he tries to spend as much time on the phone as I do. The question is, what do you think is the future for the phone when he's 18, sort of a decade from now? And as you think about the future, what does that device look like? And the other part of the question is, I think you came from a jewelry design background, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, early days, in my 20s, there's been a lot
right. So do you envision a phone that, sort of like people said, a diamond is forever, and a phone gets switched every 18 months? Do you envision a high-end phone that stays with us for a long time? I think Nokia tried to do that maybe 10 years ago with Virtue, but
the phone
does that come
evolves
back?
itself.
Well, I do think the future, in some ways, is clay, not bricks. Things will be more moldable, and I think they will be more personalized. I can't tell you, we are thinking a few years ahead, but I could say that I think personalized and moldable, because we ourselves and our world is going to change, and we're going to need our devices to be more flexible.
Great. Well, we're going to be looking forward to that, and we're going to be looking forward to the new round of products you have coming out this fall, and we'll see what you've been cooking up. Thanks so much for being here, Ivy.
Thank you.